Welcome to Open Comments with myself, Ash,
and me, Oliver,
where we'll discuss things openly with our guests from a variety of backgrounds and from different walks of life. Through this podcast, we hope to give you an inside look into a variety of topics with an equal mix of humour and candour. In this series, we'll touch on some of the following topics: healthcare, HR, diversity, access to technology, and lots more. We hope you enjoy our show and look forward to bringing more topics into the fold. Let's get started.
With us today, we have Jim Hietala, and Jim is the Vice President of Business Development and Security for the Open Group, where he manages the business team as well as the security and risk management programs and standards activities. Jim is a frequent speaker at industry events. He has also published numerous articles on information security, risk management, and compliance topics in publications including CSO, the ISSA Journal, Bank Accounting and Finance, Risk Factor, SC Magazine, and others. An IT security industry veteran, he has held leadership roles at several IT security vendors. So, Jim, welcome to the podcast. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks, Oliver, and thanks, Ash. In my current role, I manage the business team and the security standards and best practices. My career goes back quite a ways at this point, over 30 years in primarily with security firms and in business development, marketing, sales, and product management roles in those companies. So I've worked for the Open Group for 15 years now. Prior to that, worked for startups, worked for some larger communication service providers, generally in those areas. So
nice, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so to begin with, our first question is, please can you describe what upskilling and or reskilling is? Also, how important is it to you and why would you recommend doing it?
Yeah, so I think it's, the process of gaining more knowledge that enables you to, do better in your current role or qualifies you for other roles. For myself, it's been very important in the, let me think about the time frame, like 2002 time frame, the internet and telecom industry went through a huge down cycle. For myself, I got laid off from the company I was with and really had to upskill, reskill to get much more technical in the IT security domain. I took a couple of IT security training courses, got a couple of certifications, which were hugely important for me just to be able to get reemployed again in the industry. I would recommend it for anybody. It's just the world has changed from when my father's generation, came out of college and was able to work for the same company for 30 or 40 years. It's just not that way anymore. And reskilling and getting new knowledge, new capabilities is just pretty critical. So,
thank you. I noticed you had when I was reading your bio, you had a BS in marketing. It was Southern Illinois University. So I guess you can say that you're reskilling and upskilling. How did you go from studying marketing to being where you are now? So,
I originally got into a little bit different area of technology, micrographics. When I got out of college, I had a college internship in that. And, my first job ended up being in sales for a micrographics company. That industry was sort of at the end of its heyday in the early 80s. And so, I kind of deliberately proceeded in an area of finding out more about various technologies and ended up, in IT security, with that being a really growing thing in the, call it the mid 80s. So I worked first for a startup that was based out in Silicon Valley that their principal product was a system that secured dial-up modems when the threat vector in IT security was, dial-up modems, unprotected dial-up modems.
And so, obviously, you're involved with our security forum, and that covers a broad range of topics. But cybersecurity is definitely something that everyone should focus on. Could you maybe tell us a little bit as to why cybersecurity is so important?
Well, it's really where the assets of companies lie today is in digital systems, IT systems, and so whether it's money in financial institutions or intellectual property in companies. All of that information ultimately is residing on computers somewhere, and there's many ways that those who want to get to those assets can try and get in and try and do the wrong thing. So it's just as IT has evolved, and you've got so many more touch points and so many more points of entry into the systems, you've got that much more to worry about protecting. So the industry has grown by leaps and bounds since I first started. There were maybe 50 security vendors that comprised the entire IT security vendor community in the 80s. Now it's well over 3,000, and startups in many different little niches, from endpoint protection to antivirus, malware, denial of service protection. There's just many different types of systems that are needed to effectively secure systems these days. And so it's kind of a fascinating industry. It's really grown as IT has grown. Cloud security is a whole nother area that 15 years ago didn't really exist. So
nice. And on the topic of cybersecurity, can you describe the current trends that are active at the moment, please?
The kind of big overarching one, and it's an area that the Open Group's involved in as well, is something called zero trust security, or zero trust security architecture. And the notion there is that, unlike 10 or 15 years ago, where you could effectively construct a perimeter, you could defend the perimeter, you could maybe assume that the people inside of the perimeter were, trusted. The whole model is shifting to where companies are realizing they can't rely on just throwing up a firewall and saying we're good. We've constructed a viable perimeter, and they're going towards putting the security controls much closer to the data, and authenticating everybody, whether they're quote insiders, company staff, or outsiders. So that is like a philosophical change as well as an architectural change in terms of how companies are approaching security. Not assuming they can trust any device, any person, any application, authenticating everything, and getting security much closer to the actual data. So that's probably, to me, the biggest wholesale shift in IT security. And the biggest trend. Interestingly, that the way that has evolved, the Jericho Forum, which was started inside of the Open Group, maybe 15 years ago, was instrumental in that, because they were talking early on about deperimeterization, and this whole idea that perimeters were not really protecting information systems the way they needed to, and the need to shift in this direction. So I'd say that's kind of the biggest trend at this point. Supply chain security is also becoming big. That's another area that the Open Group has done some good work in the Open Trusted Technology Forum. In the area of risk management, that's another area where there's been a lot of progress. So it used to be that companies did qualitative risk management, just trying to gauge whether risks were high, medium, or low, and the severity or impact would be high, medium, and low. And they're shifting towards doing more quantitative-based risk management, where the open fair methodology from the Open Group is useful in that area as well.
Thank you. And just moving on to the kinds of opportunities that are available within cybersecurity, can you please explain to our listeners how they vary?
Yeah, so for individuals wanting to get into the cybersecurity field, there's many different kinds of roles and different ways to get involved. So you've got roles that are fairly technical, and there's technical training out there, increasingly in universities, but also in specialized training institutions. Those can be anywhere from getting training that helps somebody to just be a basic network security analyst, configuring the devices that are trying to secure the networks or the applications and data, and effectively being an engineer for an internal organization trying to secure their IT infrastructure. You've also got a number of roles on the vendor side where vendors typically need pre-sales analysts and engineers to help configure their equipment, demonstrate the equipment, that sort of thing. There's also, given the size of the industry these days, all sorts of marketing and sales roles as well. So, individuals trying to get into the field have a variety of places they can look, and at different levels of technical knowledge. And that knowledge can be picked up, like I said, not just in the university, but in many training courses, training institutions, those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Now, if you had to tie your entry into your current area of technology to one specific technology, what would that be and why?
Yeah, so if I was, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but when I got into IT security, literally the movie War Games had just come out, which was about Matthew Broderick and his girlfriend. It was like the early age of computer hackers, kids up to mischief. And the whole plot of the movie is that they dial into a bank of dial-up modems that are unprotected and get into a war game simulation that wants to launch nuclear missiles. It was a big movie in the 80s, briefly there. Anyways, dial-up modems were the threat vector, and the first security company I worked for had a system called the Defender, which would do callback and use things like the secure ID token that you see now, use those to authenticate the people trying to get into those modems. So that was the age of technology that I got into kind of my current field in.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just wondering, has there been a particular milestone of your career that's meant the most to you?
Golly, I would probably point to, so at the Open Group, initially when I signed on, I was just looking after the security standards and best practices. For the last 8 years or so, I've been involved in managing the business development team. And in that role, we've launched a number of new forums, some of which have become really rapidly growing, and they're doing great things. So for me, probably, and the first of those that I was involved with was the Open Process Automation Forum, where we recruited companies from not just the oil and gas industry, but a number of other industries to launch that forum. We brought together companies from the metals and mining industry, from the chemical industry, pulp and paper, and others. And the process of gathering that collection of end users enabled us to get the vendor community to not only pay attention, but also join the forum and start doing good work on standards and the certification programs. So, and then that led to the development of the OSDU Forum, which is now our largest forum in terms of number of people involved and engagement, as well as most recently the Open Footprint Forum. So, the succession of helping to launch and get those different forums going has probably been the most rewarding thing I've done in my career.
That's great, thank you. And speaking about your career so far, do you have any advice for new starters or even graduates who are just beginning to explore their own careers within similar fields to you? What advice would you give them currently?
Some of it's will seem a little trite, but work hard and stretch yourself. But I also think that being willing to take on hard things and even look for some of those hard things, propose those to your employers when you see problems that exist in the area that you're working in, and you can see ways to try and solve them for the benefit of the company. Don't be bashful about bringing those to the company and holding your hand up. So
what aspects of your role currently do you find the most rewarding?
Honestly, I would say the most rewarding piece, I talked about some of the interesting projects that we've done, new forums that we started. Those are all rewarding. I find it hugely rewarding to deal with people from different countries, different cultures, frequently speaking different languages, and just gaining an appreciation for concerns, what matters to people all over the world, making friendships with people who are from entirely different countries and backgrounds and cultures. The human piece of that is pretty rewarding to me, and something I'm really thankful that has been a part of my role, at least the last 15 years here at the Open Group.
Thanks for that. So if you could give yourself some advice before starting in your respective role, what would it be and why?
Yeah, honestly, if I could give myself advice 15 years ago that would have benefited me today, it probably would have been take some time out for training, actually learn that second language. I had Spanish in high school and promptly forgot it all, and at multiple times have wanted to refresh my knowledge. But it would have been hugely beneficial if I'd have taken some kind of immersion course 15 years ago that would have helped me relate better to folks who are from other cultures that don't necessarily speak our language. So in a role where you're doing a lot of international business and interacting with folks from all around the world, having more than one language, it would be really beneficial.
So if you were to give yourself, obviously based on that advice, is there any upskilling or reskilling you intend on doing in the future?
Probably not for me. I'm far enough along in my career that I'm busy enough that I'm just not gonna get there. But I've done a bunch along the way in terms of technical training that enabled me to kind of live in the world that I do now.
I think that's fair enough.
Yep.
And moving things along, can you tell us a little bit about your hobbies?
Well, I've always liked getting out in nature. For me, the pinnacle of doing that is going canoe camping up in northern Minnesota and southern Canada. Just this past summer, my wife bought me a fly fishing course. So I tried that I've had a fly rod, I've just never focused on it, but I took the course. I caught 7 fish on the day that we went out on the river, and I was hooked, literally and figuratively. So that has been a lot of fun. I've really gotten into that. And fortunately, I live in Colorado where there's a lot of opportunities to do that. So there's that. Beyond that, my kids, enjoy spending time with them. And like I said, getting out in nature, hiking and being out. So.
Nice, thank you. So we'd like to just say thank you for joining our show. It was certainly great learning not only more about you, but also about cybersecurity and the importance of reskilling and upskilling. For those that would like to keep up to date with what you do and would like to get in touch, where can they reach you?
I'm on LinkedIn, so just look for me there. And the last name is spelled Hietala. I'm happy to connect with folks on open group interest, or if you just have career questions that you think I can help with, I'd be happy to try and answer them. So.
That's great. Thank you so much. And to all our listeners, we look forward to bringing even more topics and special guests into the fold for you very soon. Please stay tuned for more.
Yeah. Thank you again, Jim, for your time.
Yep. Thank you both. Good to talk with you today.
Perfect. Thank you so much.